Hi, I'm Lynn Samita, and this is the third video under the topic of what I'm calling how we think. In terms of how we think, how we use our mind, it obviously is connected deeply to how we then use our brain. And I've talked about the difference in my thinking about just what kind of brain I have, how I use left and right hemisphere. And in this video, I want to talk about the new science that has started to really profoundly shift our thinking about the brain and its capacity to change and grow. When I was a social worker, I did a stint in a ward that had stroke patients. And in those days, if people had a stroke, we could tell within a very short period of time, a month or two, just how much capacity they were going to regain. And after that, we just assumed that the damage to the brain was permanent and that the person would just have to learn to compensate. Well, today we know that that is not true. The brain has what's called plasticity. It has capacity to change. It's not like those wooden puzzles. Do you remember those puzzles where it had all the different parts and they were all fixed? And I grew up with that image of the brain as having very fixed parts, the part for speech and the part for sight and the part for this and that. And in those days, no one thought that a part of the brain could move over, that neural pathways could develop into new areas and change function. Today, we know that that is possible. The brain does grow and it does compensate. So let me tell you about another man who's done a remarkable job of bringing the science together and sharing in his book, The Brain That Changes Itself, written by Dr. Norman Doidge. He is an incredible scientist, human being, and he was following the research of scientists who were pioneering brain changes and innovations and possibilities. And in his book, The Brain That Changes Itself, let me give you the whole title. The Brain That Changes Itself, Stories of Personal Triumph from the Frontiers of Brain Science. And he literally in his book features the scientists and the individuals who experience the result and the new technologies of the science. And he shares these remarkable stories. I think the one that shocked me the most was a woman whose vestibular system was damaged because of a medication she took. And so she had no inner ear balancing capacity and felt like she was falling all the time. Left, right, forward, regardless of her posture. Even lying down, she felt like she was falling. And it was unbearable. The research scientists were pondering, what if we could stimulate the brain in another way? We know she doesn't have the inner ear capacities that we all have. So what if we stimulate the brain through mechanical means? And so they put a sensor on her tongue and a helmet on her head, stimulating the brain in the way that the inner ear mechanism would have done. And instantly, this woman was able to stabilize. She was thrilled. She just felt calm. The world steadied, and she was back to normal in a sense. But the most remarkable thing about that story is when they took all the apparatus off, she remained stable for a number of minutes. And they were shocked. What's happening? There's nothing telling the brain how to stay steady. And if you've ever been on ice skates or skis, you know how quick you can lose your balance. But there she stood. And they realized the brain must be learning. And so, over a period of time, she spent more time with the apparatus, the helmet, the sensor, and her brain learned, and the residual effect lasted. And today, she's 100% fine. So the brain's capacity to change and grow is astonishing. And this plasticity and understanding of it has opened up all kinds of ideas. In fact, the idea that our brains are going to grow until the day we die. So based on how you're using your brain, your mind, how you're using your mind is going to affect how your brain is doing. And many of us, as we've been aging, are fascinated with, yes, how do we nurture this brain of ours? How do we optimize its capacity? Okay, there's another book that came out from Dr. Deutsch, and it's called The Brain's Way of Healing: Remarkable Discoveries and Recoveries from the Frontiers of Neuroplasticity. So Dr. Deutsch went further and started to look even more deeply into, now how does the brain heal? And the story in that book that really surprised me was of a nurse who was injured on the job. She caught a patient who fell and she hurt her back and fractured all the vertebrae in her spine. She was in such pain that she had to be on heavy medication and then went on to permanent disability. For 10 years, this woman was not able to do anything. She had a special chair imported from Japan to support her back, but she was in chronic, serious pain all the time. But she was working with a pain specialist who, by the way, happened to also have an injury. And in his own journey of recovery, he started to look at exactly what goes on inside the brain when we're in pain. And he recognized that there's like a pain map inside our brain. When we're injured, a whole area lights up. And then if we're in pain over time, this pain map grows. And he recognized that that might be why many people start with an injury in one location, and yet it seems to spread to the point where their whole body can feel like it's on fire in pain. And so he postulated, what if we could train the brain to not be lit up with pain? What if you could change just by using your mind how the pain map existed in your brain? And so he started with this woman, the nurse that was in pain. And he said to her, I don't know if it'll work, and I don't know when it will show up and you'll start to feel some effects, but it took about 3 weeks for me. And what he had her do is he showed her a picture of her brain with all of the neural pathways lit up. And then he showed her a picture, a CAT scan of a brain that was not in pain. And he said, I want you to visualize taking your brain that's in pain and making it look like a brain that's not. And he said to her, spend as much time as you can. And because she was lying in this chair, she had a lot of time to focus on that. Nothing happened for 3 weeks. But after the 3rd week, she started to feel like she was in a little less pain. In the 4th week, it was better. And the 5th week, it was even better. This woman, whose back has not changed one iota, is not in pain at all. She's up, she's moving, and she has her life back. So what that shows us is that when we think the pain is in our body, it's often in our mind and brain, and that's where we need to focus. Well, this is a radical paradigm shift, and I'm still trying to wrap my mind around it, that the pain, in fact, could be in my brain, not in my body. So, all of this, of course, relates to wellness. If we can change our mind, which then changes our brain, we've opened the door to some very exciting ideas about wellness. All right, so that's the end of my 3 videos on how we think. What I want to go to next in the video is what we think. And those of you that have studied with Dr. Glasser, his ideas, you know how important our thinking is. But I'm going to dive a little deeper into some of the impact of our thinking and where I've tripped up. So in the next video, I'm going to dive into our thoughts and our beliefs. Are they hurting or helping us? Thanks for watching.